Welcome to Pipe Talk. I'm Darren Sparks from International Pipe Companies, home of Bison, Big Bear, and Bigfoot, where I bring you information about market conditions, pipe specials, panels, gates, and answers to whatever other questions you may have. Today, we're going to talk about the perfect fence. I get asked all the time, what is the perfect fence? What kind of fence should I buy? And the bad news is, there is no perfect fence. There's multiple kinds of fencing for multiple kinds of uses, and if you got a budget or you're just trying to maximize your budget, then I would recommend several kinds of fencing to have on your property. Let's talk about the kind of fence that you need where. In a pasture, critters tend to be less problematic. So if you have cattle or horses or goats, when they have food and water and they're with other animals, they don't tend to cause you problems. They just want to eat and drink and bathe in the sun. In those areas, you don't need quite the fence you do in areas that you're going to contain them and keep them from long periods of time, especially if you're putting horses together that haven't been around each other, or you're putting a bunch of cattle together and you're going to drive them up a lane. So you want to spend your money in the areas that you're going to have the most problems, and that's going to be in your containment areas, your crowd alleys, your separating, inside your stalls, places like that. Let's talk about panels. Everybody needs a few panels around leaning up against the back of the barn, or you can use those for your containment areas if you buy a good quality panel. Lightweight panels can be a problem because if your horse gets on top of them and they bend, then that creates a trap. So I'd always recommend a good quality panel. And they come in straight leg and mud leg, which is a little round leg on the bottom. And with those legs, you want a kind of panel that you're going to use for the situation. So if you're building a round pen, you might want a straight leg panel so it doesn't move if you happen to bump up against it. But if you've got to drag panels around and maybe you're not of large stature, you may want a mud leg on that panel. Then you can drag it where it needs to be to fix a fence, to contain an animal, to separate animals, to build a lane to herd something somewhere. Those are the times that you're going to use panels, unless you use panels for your containment areas. When you talk about gates, you want to get a good quality gate, especially in the areas that you're going to be in and out of all the time. Maybe something with a greasable hinge. That is where you're going to spend most of your time at a fence, is in the gate, going in and out of it. You're going to want a good quality gate there. Then let's talk about keeping in goats, calves, small critters. You're going to want a good mesh fence. It's the easiest to install. You hardly ever have any problems. We sell Stay Tough because it's one of the few fences that you can stretch extremely tight. When it comes to catch areas, that's where you're going to want good solid steel fencing, because those areas are where you're going to be pushing on animals, you're going to be doctoring animals, you're going to be trying to catch animals. Those are the places that you're going to want a good solid steel fence or good quality panel so that you don't have problems with the horses or cattle getting away from you. Now, when you're putting fence up in front of your house, I would recommend aesthetically pleasing quality fence, not too tall, in the areas that circulate your home. You don't want to look out and just look at fence. The average height of the fence that keeps most critters in is the height of a light switch. Think about that when you're building your fence. So in my opinion, depending on your situation, depending on what you're trying to do, you want to match the fencing to the situation. Pasture fencing doesn't need to be as heavy duty as containment areas, doesn't need to be as heavy duty as a stall. So you want a good solid steel fence or a solid steel panel in your stall areas or your containment areas. So I hope this helps. That's the definition of the perfect fence.